راك حابب تكتب ورقة بحثية بالإنجليزية, be it a research article or a thesis, this video is for you. Hello everyone, it's Amazon Shed here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a high school English teacher and I'm doing my PhD in didactics of the English language, specializing in academic writing. I'm currently working as a writing consultant and as the associate director of the Algerian Online Writing Lab, and I occasionally create content to help researchers and university students with their English academic writing. Today, I'm going to show you how to write empirical research papers, those that collect and analyze original data to answer a specific research question or to test a hypothesis. This includes research articles and theses that present original findings. That being said, we will not cover non-empirical papers such as theoretical studies or reviews, which do not involve primary data collection. All empirical research papers written in English consist of 8 essential components: title, abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, and references. These elements form the backbone of empirical writing in English and ensure that the study is presented clearly and logically. However, in some journals or disciplines, additional sections may appear, such as the literature review section, like in theses, and appendices. And some papers may combine sections, like the introduction with literature review, discussion with conclusion, depending on the journal's requirements and the nature of the study. With that disclosure, let's dig right into it. To give you the full picture, I've adopted 2 famous models for academic and research writing, the fish model and the hourglass model. The first one to show you the essential anatomy and sections every paper must have, and the second to show you the logical flow and the scope of the narrative and how to transition from one section to another. Starting with the fish model, think of it as a structural checklist. It tells you what sections you need and what content goes in each bone. Number 1, title. It's your first chance to hook readers. It provides readers with their first impression of your work. For that, it should be concise and informative. It should tell your readers exactly what the study is about without them having to go through the whole paper. To formulate an effective title, Branson 2004 recommends reading titles of related works in the same field and paying attention to the wording, the length, and structure. And it is also recommended that a title should be no longer than 10 words in length. Although the title appears first in the paper, it should only be finalized once the whole study is finished, because only then we can tell and identify the most important theoretical issues or variables to mention in the title. Number 2, the abstract. It is a mini version of the entire paper, and it is usually a single paragraph of no longer than 250 words. If you want a step-by-step explanation on how to write an abstract, I've made a full video on that and I'll attach the link so you can watch it. Number 3, the introduction, sometimes referred to as the background. It lays the groundwork for the paper and it follows a funnel approach. It starts abroad and then narrows to your specific research question or hypothesis. At the widest part of the funnel, you are establishing the territory by introducing the topic and offering the broad context. Then you narrow the funnel by summarizing existing research. This is what we call literature review, the known, what is already known about your topic. You do that by presenting a synthesis of recent and relevant studies. It isn't just a list, it's a narrative of what scientists have already discovered. After that, you must show that something is missing. This is what we call the gap. What is unknown? Here you identify a specific area where current literature is either silent, contradictory, or outdated. Once you identify the knowledge gap, you must explain why does this gap matter. In other words, you should explain the burden caused by this lack of knowledge. For example, costs, health risks, or maybe a social impact. Think of it as a justification or a significant statement. It answers the question, what is the significance of the issue at hand? Next, and bear in mind that we're at the bottom of the funnel. This is the exact point of your paper. It's a clear statement of what you intend to do, the aim and the research question, and the hypothesis. Although novice writers often overlook the inclusion of a hypothesis, me included, Branson and other writing specialists stress its essential role in research writing. Number 4, method, sometimes referred to as methodology. This is the recipe of your paper. It must be detailed enough that another researcher could replicate your study exactly. Here we are at the neck of the hourglass where your writing must be very specific. This comprehensive section should include information about the study design, which shows the overall logic of your study, the population and sampling, who is being studied and how you chose them, materials and equipment, and here you specify the tools and instruments you use, procedure, and this is the step-by-step narrative of the data collection process. And finally, the analysis, and this is where you explain how you handled and converted the data into a result. Number 5, results. This section is strictly for findings and facts. No interpretations and no opinions yet. Also, no references to other works. Try to answer the question, what did the data actually show? And you can use tables and figures to represent complex data clearly. When listing the findings, we should follow the same sequence we used when listing the experiments in the methods section. Many writers provide interpretations and discussion here, but that is not the right place for that. Number 6, discussion. This is where you interpret the results. That is, you interpret the findings in relation to the original problem. Here's what you should do in the discussion section. You should briefly restate your main finding in plain English without using heavy statistics or numbers to answer your original research question and refer back to the hypothesis, because basically writers pose a question and then they describe the methods used to answer it, then they present the results. After that, they must answer the research question and state whether the hypothesis was confirmed or refuted. After that, you interpret and contextualize your study's findings with existing knowledge. You do that by comparing your results with the previous studies you mentioned earlier in the introduction. You answer whether your work supports or contradicts with what others have found and why, and what is it that you found that no one else has mentioned. When you cite earlier authors that you mentioned in the introduction, this creates a thematic loop, which makes your paper feel like a complete, cohesive study rather than two separate parts. After that, you mention the implications and significance of your findings. What do they mean and why do they matter? Next, limitations. When you're honest and you mention the weaknesses of your study, this shows integrity and professionalism. Why? Because when you acknowledge that, for example, your sample was small or your time frame was short, you show the reader that you are a neutral scientist trying to seek the truth and not a salesperson trying to force a result. And remember, no study is perfect. Finally, it is recommended that you conclude the discussion section by suggesting future research directions related to your research topic. Number 7, conclusion. It can be written as a closing statement in the discussion section or in a separate section. Its main goal is to provide the take-home message. It is for closing doors and not opening new ones. Therefore, it shouldn't introduce new information. It simply states whether you achieved your goal in a clear and definitive statement of your main finding in relation to your original objective. Then it synthesizes this into a call to action or a statement of value. If we refer back to the hourglass model, you see at the top of the hourglass the introduction following the funnel approach, and then at the neck of the hourglass we've got the methods and results, which are the most specific and detailed sections in the paper. Then in the discussion and conclusion, you start again with the specific results and you start to broaden them to the broader context. What do your results mean to the world or your field of study? I almost forgot number 8, references. This is a list of every source you cited throughout the paper. Remember, you should follow the same style throughout the paper, be it APA, MLA, and remember that using recent sources from the last 5 to 10 years in your paper builds more credibility. This section gives credits to the authors whose work you built upon, and it shows the reader that your arguments are supported by existing peer-reviewed evidence. Speaking of which, I've attached all the sources I used for this video in the description box for your review as well. And with that, we finish this chapter. ما تنسوش تدعموا القناة والصفحة خاطر راهم يموتوا، ونلقاكم في الفيديو القادم بإذن الله، والسلام عليكم.